It's the week after Dia de los Muertos in 2025, which is the third Dia de los Muertos that I've actually celebrated without David. And I've posted a few posts. I think I've done it the last two times as well too on Instagram, just to kind of share what's been going on during those holidays and how I honor him. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there's definitely been a couple of changes. My name is Maria Juarez, and you're listening to In This Casa. Bienvenidos. So, I don't know if those who are listening follow any of my social media on Instagram or TikTok or watch these episodes on YouTube, but if you do, you may have noticed that there was a difference between the photos of when I was celebrating Dia de los Muertos for David at the cemetery with him this year versus the past 2 years. So I wanted to kind of talk about it because I did something this year that I think is typically considered a bit taboo or unorthodox. It's not something that I think is ordinary in our culture, at least. But on the second anniversary of David's accident, I had David moved. So when David passed away, obviously it was unexpected. And even though it was unexpected, there were some things that my family and I had in place in regards to plans for final resting place or when you pass away. My mom is in the funeral business and has been for decades, and I've introduced her on a previous episode. We've talked a little bit about it. And so on both sides of my family owns cemetery spaces for our family. They own grave spaces for us to be buried one day. And so we also have prearranged funerals. We did those kinds of things because we saw that it was important to plan those things, lock in the current day pricing to make sure that we saved a little bit of money. And that way, in the event of the worst, we weren't going to be, going through grief and then also dealing with the emotions and the devastation of having to come up with thousands and thousands of dollars for final arrangements. So when David passed, the obvious and easy choice at that moment was to place him in the spaces that my mom already had, where we intended to go one day, where my mom was going to go and my sister and I were going to go, and our spouses and kids. So it was a no-brainer. That was where he was going. And if you are somebody who is a part of our family or our friend group, just a part of our life, who was there at the time that he passed, then you likely attended the funeral. And so at the funeral, you are aware of where we placed him. On the cemetery grounds, it wasn't far from the chapel because his procession walked over from the chapel after his mass to his final resting place. And I went out and I visited him almost daily in that spot for 2 years. And it was a beautiful spot for him to be in. And there wasn't absolutely anything wrong with the spot, except that there weren't a lot of spaces. My mom only had a certain amount of spaces there, and we have more family members in our, I don't know if it's technically a nuclear family or just our but our core family members, there's more of us than how many spaces were there. So we started having conversations about, who was going to go be placed there. Did we need to buy some more spaces? And my mom and I did end up buying a couple of spaces not too far from her existing spaces and where David was laid to rest. But they weren't right there together. So we were okay with that. That probably happened a year after he passed. So it wasn't really anything I'd thought about for about a year. But maybe a few months before David's second anniversary of his passing, there was an opportunity for me to trade up my mom's spaces, so to speak, and to get us more space. So that way we had more space for family members. We had an estate for the family, a larger estate for the family, rather. And so to do that meant that I was going to have to move David. For me in particular, I don't think that was it wasn't something that I was initially adverse to. It wasn't something that gave me pause to even think about. It didn't, I didn't rebuke the idea. I didn't think that like, oh my God, that's, how could you do that? Although I do think that that is likely some of the first reactions from some people. And I don't know if that's a cultural thing or a societal thing. I'm not really sure. But I know that if you work in the funeral business, occasionally there are times when people are disinterred, right? So that's what it's called. Being disinterred is to be removed from your existing place of rest. And so it just didn't strike me as odd or anything that I was unwilling to do. So I made that plan, and I decided that his second anniversary, or the second anniversary of his passing, was approaching. And last year, for our family, I wanted us all to be together here in our home. So our closest family unit came over, and I catered dinner, and we did a sound bath in honor of David, and it was really beautiful. This year, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do to honor him. So needing to move him actually for me became a perfect way to honor his passing again. So that's what I did. I decided that we were going to move him the morning of August 12th. It was a weekday, and we did it very, very early. Again, it was just the core family members who were here for the sound bath last year, the people that were closest to David. And I did discuss with all of our loved ones that I was going to move him. Obviously, I discussed it with my children, with my parents, David's parent, his sister, and nephews, and my siblings. And honestly, during the discussion, it wasn't really a discussion. It was just me informing everybody that this is what I was going to do. And that I hope they understood the reasons why I was doing it, and that I wanted them to be there. If that was something that they felt that they wanted to be present for, that I wanted them to be there when we moved him. So most of the family was present when we moved him. And that morning was honestly more than what I expected it to be. It was a beautiful morning. It was in August, but it was not hot. It was nice and cool and calm outside. And the cemetery team did a great job in handling him throughout the disinterment, and then transporting him from the old space to his new resting space. And something actually happened that I was not expecting during us laying him to rest for a second time. I knew that I felt like that was a proper way to, if I was going to have to move him, that it felt like the proper way to honor him and honor doing that would be on the anniversary of his passing. It felt like the right day to do it. But once the cemetery team carried him over to the new space, obviously we followed in our vehicles, and then we parked alongside the garden, and we got out, and they were using equipment, and they lowered him into the space, and we all watched him be lowered into the space together, which did not happen at the funeral. Well, honestly, I don't remember everybody who continued to stay at his funeral past, when we did the blessing graveside and then he was lowered. I guess everybody was there when he was lowered, but I don't know. There was something about this moment because I just feel like we were more present. I feel like, David died on a Saturday, and then I buried him the next Saturday, 7 days later. And it was so fast, and it was so unexpected. And I definitely was trying to do the best that I could to give my husband a dignified send-off. But in doing so, there's so much that I just feel like I was checked out of or wasn't able to also process or focus on. And so, I know that I stayed until he was lowered. They moved all of the seats and the tent over him during his funeral. And then they brought the backhoe in and they filled his grave and placed all of his flowers on top of him. I did not leave until everything was complete. But I don't think all my family did, which is understandable. I don't know that, the core family that I'm talking about, I don't know that they all did. And I'm not saying that they should have. I'm just saying that I don't know that that's what happened that day, whether or not it was timing or they had other family members they needed to handle. It was super, super hot that day. It was like 108 degrees. Or if they were, handling other stuff for the funeral arrangements that I wasn't paying attention to, or if they just emotionally couldn't handle continuing to sit there and do it. But this was different because we were all there. It was 2 years later, and we watched him be lowered into the ground. And then we had the ability to get closer to his open grave and join hands and pray for him and over him. And then we all were able to put some holy water on him and on his tomb and give him a blessing. And then we backed up and we watched them fill his grave. And I think that although it may seem strange at the idea of placing somebody to rest and then later removing them from that place, disinterring them from that place and moving them somewhere else, that may seem like a strange concept to some people. I really think that it was good for my family. I think it all gave us an opportunity to really process burying him, to really process laying him to rest. I don't know that we were all able to process that at that time. And I think this time we were able to have a moment with him, just us. And we were able to, I'm distracted because that's a subject for another episode, but I think it just gave us an opportunity to be more present emotionally. We were more present there with him. And I think it gave us a little bit of closure in a way that we didn't have the first time around because of how tragic it was for him to go and it to be so unexpected. And we laid him to rest a week later, and I think it was just, it wasn't closure laying him to rest. It was just devastation. And I think that this offered that to us. I think it gave us a little bit more peace in some ways. I'm not encouraging or advocating for people to go around disinterring their family members and moving them. I just know that I did not mention it to a lot of people who are in our life, but it may still have been something that was noticeable on social media if you're looking at my posts. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned, what happened and the reasons why I did it and why it wasn't something that I wouldn't consider doing. I really love the new space that he's in. It's really beautiful. I think it is befitting of him and things that he had said to me previously. We spent a lot of time at the cemetery because his mother passed 5 months into our relationship, and my mom worked there, and so the cemetery is not a place that's uncomfortable for me. We got married there, so we did spend, quite a bit of time throughout our marriage going to the cemetery. So there would be conversations about things in regards to where we were going to be or where he would like to be or where he would like for all of us to be or things like that. So I do feel like where I moved him is a very, very fitting spot. I'm really happy with it. I think the family is happy with it. I hope he's happy with it. And I don't think that David would be bothered that I moved him. The girls and I joked when the funeral team the cemetery team rather, was moving him from his original space to the new estate. We were driving behind the tractor. I was the first car behind the tractor, and it was me and my mom and my 2 daughters in the car. And I joked with my daughters that only their dad would be having another adventure even after death. That was so him. David was so adventurous. David wanted to do everything that had never been done. He wanted to experience everything new and everything cool and everything fun and all the things. And so I just told the girls, we kind of laughed about it, that it was fitting that, only him having an adventure even after death. So I think he's happy with where we are. I'm happy with the decision I made. I feel like my family is content with the decision that was made. And I just wanted to talk about it a little bit because it's not typically something that you come across somebody doing. And, I don't know how you in particular feel about it, negative or positive, but, just in the event that it does initially strike you as something that would be like negative, or there's a superstition and a negative connotation towards it, or it just seems strange, I just thought it might be a good conversation to have about how I looked at it and how I felt like it was something that was appropriate for my family, and why I did it. But thanks for joining me today. I hope you come back next Saturday and we can continue to talk about what it's like in my casa. I'll talk to you soon.